All right, let's just jump right into this. Imagine the government rolls out this huge new rule, right? It's supposed to fight crime, it goes live across the whole country, and then poof, a judge just tosses the whole thing out. Days later. Well, that's not a hypothetical, it's exactly what just went down. So, really, the big question we're digging into here is how? How does a massive federal rule, one designed to stop criminals from washing dirty money through real estate, just get completely taken apart in a Texas courtroom? It's a wild story. The timeline here is it's crazy. On March 1st, this government agency, FinCEN, that's the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, they launched this huge new rule. And then, get this, by the end of that same week, a federal judge just says nope and vacates the whole thing. It's like hitting the emergency stop on a giant government project before it even left the station. Okay, so to really get why this ended up in court, we've got to back up a little. We need to understand the problem FinCEN was trying to fix in the first place. And yeah, it's a big one. It's all about this idea of dirty cash pouring into the real estate market. So money laundering, right? The basic idea is super simple. You're just washing dirty money so it looks clean and legal. And for ages, one of the best washing machines, so to speak, has been real estate. And why is that? Well, it's pretty stable, it holds its value, and, buying a building just feels legitimate. So what FinCEN was saying is that criminals were using these giant loopholes. I'm talking setting up anonymous shell companies or trusts, then basically walking in with a ton of cash, or, the modern wire transfer version of that, and just buying up property. And because there's no mortgage, no bank loan, the whole deal can just fly under the radar of a lot of the usual financial checks. And look, the stakes here, at least according to the rules supporters, are incredibly high. This quote from Ian Gary, he's with the Fact Coalition, it really shows you how seriously they're taking this. They're basically saying that killing this rule is a huge win for cartels and other criminal groups. Wow. So FinCEN saw this massive problem, and they came up with what they thought was a really comprehensive solution. But what did this new rule actually require people to do? Well, the rule itself was kind of simple on paper, but it was incredibly broad in real life. Basically, it turned title insurance companies into the new watchdogs. Anytime a residential property was bought without a loan, so think all cash deals, and the buyer wasn't a person but a company or a trust, boom, the title company had to file a report with the government. And this wasn't just for, hot spots like Miami or New York. It was nationwide. Didn't matter if it was a multi-million-dollar mansion or $50,000 piece of land. And the sheer scale of this, it's just mind-boggling. FinCEN's own estimate was that this new rule would trigger reporting on something like 850,000 property deals every single year. That is a massive wave of new data just flooding into the government, covering hundreds of thousands of sales that used to happen completely off the books, so to speak. But of course, all that paperwork and reporting, it doesn't come free. It comes with a pretty hefty price tag. The government's own analysis projected that just complying with this rule would cost the industry almost $700 million a year. And you know where that cost ends up, right? It's a huge financial burden that was probably going to get passed down to people like you and me through higher closing costs. So you can see where this is going. You've got this massive new scope and this huge cost, and that combo led directly to a courtroom battle. A title company down in Texas filed a lawsuit, and their argument was basically, hey, this isn't about fighting crime anymore. This is the government going way too far. And this is where the legal nitty-gritty gets really interesting. On one side, you have FinCEN saying, look, the law gives us the authority to create whatever procedures we need to stop crime. But on the other side, the title company, it's called Flowers Title, they basically said, whoa, not so fast. Congress only gave you power over deals that are already objectively suspicious. Their whole point was just because somebody pays cash for a house doesn't automatically make them a criminal. So it's this really fundamental fight over just how much power this agency actually has. So this legal showdown set the stage for a really big decision. So how did the judge rule? And what does the fallout look like now? Well, the verdict was about as decisive as it gets. The judge, Jeremy Kernodle, sided 100% with the title company. And he didn't just, pause the rule or ask them to tweak it. Nope, he vacated it, the entire thing. Which means, as of that moment, the regulation was totally null and void, gone. And here is the absolute core of the judge's logic. He basically said that FinCEN was just casting way too wide a net. His point was, yeah, sure, Some bad guys use cash to buy houses, but that doesn't give the government the right to treat every single person who pays in cash like a potential suspect. It was a flat-out rejection of this whole idea that you can label an entire type of transaction as suspicious by default. And the reaction to this? Well, as you can probably guess, it was completely split down the middle. On one side, you had the real estate and title industries breathing this huge sigh of relief. No more giant compliance headache. But on the other side, transparency advocates were just furious. They saw this as a massive step backward in the fight against dirty money. Okay, but just when you think it's over, the story takes another really wild turn. Because while this judge in Texas was striking the rule down, it turns out a different federal judge down in Florida had already looked at the very same rule in a different case and decided to uphold it. So now you've got two federal courts looking at the exact same regulation and coming to two completely opposite decisions? What a mess. Now, this kind of legal contradiction has a name. It's called a circuit split. And in the legal world, it's a really big deal. I mean, think about it. You can't have a federal law that's valid in Florida but illegal in Texas. That just creates chaos and uncertainty for everyone. And because of that contradiction, it is almost a guarantee that the government is going to appeal that Texas decision. They'll push it to a higher court to try and get one single final answer for the entire country. And that really leaves us with the million-dollar question, doesn't it? This whole case, when you strip it all away, boils down to a fundamental debate. How much burden, how much reporting is too much, even when you're trying to fight crime and protect national security? Where do we draw the line between security and personal freedom or privacy? That is the massive question that the appeal courts and maybe even the Supreme Court are going to have to tackle next.